Yeah, film. Yeah, films. We watched some films. Now let's talk about those films.
So, all that being said, let's talk about Culture Shock. So Culture Shock is from 2019 and is about this thriller follows a young Mexican woman in pursuit of the American dream who crosses illegally into the United States only to find herself in an American nightmare. Wink. It's directed by Gigi Saul Guerrero and it is written by Efren Hernandez, James Benson, and Gigi Saul Guerrero. And I find that important because Gigi came on as the director, but the script was more or less already written out. Mm-hmm. And then she was kind of spearheading it and, bringing it to life and was able to pitch it in a way where it got that funding and backing that it did. For something like Hulu. And I think that's awesome. I, through one of the Latine filmmaking either a conference or something, I encountered Gigi Saul Guerrero and a panel, and I found her really motivating and lively. She's very lively and fun and passionate about what she does. So I can see they picked the right person. They picked someone who's going to care and also do it in a really great way. So shout out to her. Maybe one day we'll talk to her on our show. Gigi, if you're out there, hi.
We like you.
Good job. Yeah, I'm so glad. I wish more money for you.
Yes.
More money, more support for you in the future. So, let's talk about the film. So, Stepford Wives, Matrix, Pleasantville, and Don't Worry, Darling, before it even existed, wrapped up in an impactful and dark bow. That is what this film is. It is a science fiction horror film that leans a bit more into nonfiction, addressing the many layers of horror surrounding immigration. The very many, all the different angles you could have with immigration. So it's a film where no matter how gross or gory it could get, the horrors there in the film pale in comparison to the ones experienced in reality. And the director takes us on a journey with the protagonist, Marisol, who's played by Martha Higareda, who I recognize her in, what was she in? She's in other science fiction-y shows. Altered Carbon.
I remember that show. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's in Altered Carbon, which one day we will cover because I have things to say. But in this, Marisol is a pregnant woman seeking the American dream across the border. And it starts in Mexico, where we meet Marisol long after a failed attempt at crossing the border. And during her first attempt, she was assaulted by someone that she trusted, her boyfriend at the time, Oscar, who abandons her and makes his way across without her. Now incredibly pregnant and still eager to cross, if not more so, she seeks out the coyote that took her the first time to take her this time. And later, when we see the struggles and dangers that Marisol faces in crossing the border, we wonder what could be pushing her forward despite the dangers, right? What is propelling her forward, even though she knows it's scary and everyone is telling her, there's so many, even the coyote is you know how dangerous it is for women and you're hella pregnant.
Yeah.
And she's still pushing forward. So you have to wonder what is doing that. And I think what's really interesting about this is we get a glimpse into what could be inspiring her flee, but it's really ambiguous. It really is her fleeing for an American dream. And we don't it's insinuated, and we do see pieces of it, of the horrors, but a lot of that is through the journey itself of getting there. So for that, I do think we are missing the backstory. And I think that's very intentional because we don't want to, because the point is the American dream in America is awful, not Mexico is also awful.
Yeah.
It's this journey is dangerous and people are making it.
Yeah. So
something's going on here that is bringing them here, but it's not important to cover why. So We do catch glimpses of what Marisol is leaving behind, including her mother and a community of women who are struggling with their own insecurities, restrictions, and fears. Marisol's mother in a scene is encouraging these women to carry birth control. She's urging them to do that. And the unspoken danger is evident in Marisol's current condition and her dire situation. Right? So she's trying to run and she's 9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Girls don't be this, right?
Yeah.
And they still fight against that and refuse explaining that they're Catholic. But further, there's, this unspoken moment because there's no ignoring also the history and the distrust that came from that history of brown women regarding birth control, which has historically been experimented on using Latina and Black women, specifically. And that often results in health complications, sterilization, and even death. And if you do want to learn more about that specific, the practices of using even Puerto Rican women to test out the effects of birth control before they were safe for consumption, then you can listen to our episode on the population control, where we talk about documentaries that were covering that. We also covered the fact that that's still happening, and some of those horrors are still going on that happen once they get over here too. Yeah. So those are some of the conditions in which women are needing to flee, or it kind of spells out there is danger here, not even just in trying to leave. And so Marisol explains to her mother that there's nothing here for her child and that she has no plan of raising her in this place. She, as a woman experiencing some of the horrors of Mexico at this time, doesn't want to bring up her daughter in the same space. And her mom's like, but I'm here. And she set her eyes on a dream, this fabricated ideal world called America. And her mom's like, that is exactly what it is, a dream. You get out of your own head. And she's like, no, I got to do it. So if you do need more information to understand Marisol and other women like her's journeys, I encourage you to watch the film Tigers Are Not Afraid, which is primarily about children in Mexico, but it does cover femicide and a lot of the horrors that are happening to women and children in Mexico right now. You can listen to our episodes about it, and that film is by Isa Lopez, and it is another one of those films we're really glad exists. It's heavy, much heavier than this. So if any of this feels rough, maybe not. Maybe just listen to our episode about it, because that one's heavy, and for good reason. So whatever the reasons, Marisol pushes through the tumultuous journey. She encounters others as desperate as she is, including a young Guatemalan boy named Ricky, played by Ian Inigo, and a killer with tattoos and a history named Santo, played by Richard Cabral, who's a fun fact, the most loco from the Key and Peele skit, where they're like, oh, I'm the most loco out of all of them. He's the one who's the most loco. He's the one who catches the bullet in his teeth. As soon as I saw it, I was like, the most loco. Just fun. And he's playing this, hardened, he's got tattoos that are supposed to tell, you earn them through murder. He's probably with the cartel or something. And escaping, trying to find a new life and start over. And he's one of the best people that are in this film. And he's not even doing anything that great.
Yeah, he's just not contributing to the harm and helping protect.
Yeah, he's trying to help. He's trying to be better. And that in itself is forget about wherever else he was, right? Yeah. And despite the dangers and attention, each stop on the journey is ripe with men taking advantage of the situation for money or other horrifying things. And be gross. And that's exactly what it is. And for women who are traveling all alone, and children traveling all alone, that in itself was scary. Before we even got to the we're scary in America, it was already scary. Yeah. And in the night when they are making their last run to the border, they are confronted by the terror of the cartel and the American Border Patrol. Yeah. So they're stuck between a rock and an arguably worse rock, and they try to make it only to ultimately be captured by the patrol. Mm-hmm. And it's a very brief moment. It's just pure. It's a lot of darkness and just panic and seeing light for a brief moment, seeing gunfire, hearing shouts in Spanish, then hearing shouts in English, and lights over here, lights over there. And it's this really discombobulated terror moment. And for me, I think that was the best scene in the whole film.
Yeah.
Because that was really like, there's nothing. Like, she's been pushing through, encountering really horrible situations, all with this hope of getting to this like wonderful land. And then she's like confronted by two horrors at once. Yeah. Because both sides suck. Which is an understatement. saying the border patrol sucks, the cartel sucks. Like, a little more than that, but you see what I'm saying. So here's where the film takes a quick turn into science fiction, and Marisol wakes in a pristine house, no longer pregnant, and dressed in pastels to match the entire town. Everything is pastel, which is where, like, she says it's like inspired by, part of it's Pleasantville, even though Pleasantville is in black and white most of the time. I get what she's saying. Second of all, it was all 1950s publicity and like, what was the word? Propaganda.
Of what like America was.
So it's like that idyllic, like those posters that are just like paused. Kind of like what we would see in like Fallout, where it was like, America was so beautiful and perfect. And then we blew ourselves up. So that's what she was like inspired by, Gigi. And so Marisol wakes and she meets Betty, who's an unexplained white woman in her house, played by Barbara Cranston. And she's holding her newborn daughter. And just like a side thing, every review for this film is like played by the amazing as always Barbara Cranston. And that's not to say she's not a decent actress, and she's very well loved in the horror community, but she's like barely in this film. She's not doing anything.
And like, I wouldn't say like this is her best role either. Like she was fine.
They're like the ever delightful. It's like she's there for like 5 minutes and she's not delightful. She's like just there. Like, she's just a tool. Like she's just supposed to be kind of creepy. And she's like, oh, darling, don't stress. But she doesn't do anything. Like, she's not giving Get Out level performance of
she's giving NPC.
And I'm still bitter about Jacob's wife. So don't at me. But every single time I was like, really? And it was absurd. Is every single review. Like, I'm going to include other reviews of this film in the show notes. So go ahead and check it out yourselves, listeners. And you'll see the ever amazing, the always talented, the beautiful. I was like, what is this? Why are we up? Like, get off Barbara's dick here. What is happening? I don't know. Regardless, Betty takes Marisol out on the town, showing her the tranquil Pleasantville suburbia that, in true American melting pot fashion, features people of all races. And they're all happy, and it's wonderful here. And you made it. Marisol, you made it. It was all worth it. And she's like, okay, but can I hold my baby?
And she's like, no.
Like, no. You're tired. Excuse me. That's not... What's happening? Even the young boy Ricky and the caring killer Santo and the disgusting villain Oscar, her ex-boyfriend, are here. And they're living their best life.
All smiles.
They're all smiles.
All that uncanny valley look in their eye.
Hi. And they, I will say there's it gets kind of in the middle when we're in this, like Pleasantville time. It gets a little dry. It gets a little run-in, but there are moments that I was like, no. Like when she's talking to someone and she's talking to Santo and they're figuring out that something isn't right. And everyone stops what they're doing and just like turns and looks at them. I was like, that's good. Like the glitches and some of the other things that are like, something isn't right. First of all, I was like, the lamp, the Reddit lamp. So you know something's wrong, and that was exciting. But it was really like those very small moments of just like everyone being quiet. They all stopped. That's unsettling as F. So each day is a blur of conformity and pastel dread as Marisol fights against the glitching universe. And when she protests or asks questions, she's lectured about culture shock and told to shut up and fit in. Like, no, honey, it's all fine. You're a little homesick.
Yeah, and
Like,
like
no, I'm like reality sick.
yeah, and like all the white people in it that are like either the NPCs or the mayor are like the enforcers of like whatever. Like if you don't assimilate, you are watched. You're a target, and that's very
Assimilate.
Mhm.
Yeah. And refusing to settle and growing agitated at her inability to hold her own damn child, Marisol begins to explore and test the confines of her new world. And what she finds is that this isn't the American dream, but rather an American simulation. So
Mhm.
she and the others who've been caught trying to go over the border are now in a shabby, disgusting facility, understaffed and inhumane, and not that far from reality. That's what the facilities kind of look like now. This is a facility. The facility is a lab that has them strapped into these makeshift VR contraptions, which is what I imagine the "Don't Worry, Darling" girls are in.
Mhm.
And they're fed brown goop by way of a feeding tube, which explains like the ravenous and unsettling imagery of the folks eating in the simulation. They're like, it's really gross, and especially if you
They really
have
play it up.
misophonia, it's a mess. It's a problem, and I get it. It's also like mentioned like when from the people who are outside that this is cheaper than putting them in a real system, because then they have to treat them maybe kind of like humans. So here they don't have to.
Yeah.
So they just kind of put them in there until they die, and they could conduct experiments. And it's, again, not super far from what happens in reality. So Marisol continues to fight against the simulation, fearing for her baby's life, and enlists the help of Santo. And the two hatch a plan that has them escaping the facility, and they release all of the others. And as they make their way to their country of dreams, Marisol turns back home. And she tells Santo she's going home. There's nothing for her in America, and that the dream has, the fantasy of the greener grass has been expelled. She sees America for what it is, not a dream, but a nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's true. And it was like as complicated as the reality of that situation. Like she just had a baby and she's going to walk home from the border. Again, she's like so worth it. So worth it to not be here. The better the devil you know. Right? At least I get to speak my language. Like that was a funny part where they're like escaping and there's like an announcement going on and it's like in English. And they're like, okay. And they're like, I don't fucking know. I don't know that. And that to me is also funny because they never ever intended someone who doesn't speak English to have to be conscious or cognizant of what's happening. But it also makes me think of all the like Israeli notices that have been going out to the Palestinians where it's like they're in English and it's like, who is this for? Who is this for?
And so they can say they told someone something, I guess.
Yeah, and we can read it. And we're the ones it's for. Anyway, as gross and unsettling as the film can be at times, it is rather subdued. This was intentional, as director Gigi Saul Guerrero wanted to cover the heavy topics with care, working to not re-traumatize her audience with the real horrors of the immigration system that is here. In an interview with Variety titled Into the Dark, Culture Shock director on timeless qualities of border crossing film, she said, "The brutality and the inhumane subject matter is there, and unfortunately we see that every day for a while now, and it's quite heartbreaking. I didn't want to make something so heartbreaking that we'd have trouble watching, because we already have enough trouble watching it every day." So I appreciate the care that she took in covering her and the team in covering the film. As far as like Into the Dark Hulu films go, this is definitely one of the best ones.
Yeah.
We've also covered New Year, New Me in our New Year, New Me section, and that was a part of Into the Dark. It is still not as good as this one. And it is an instance where we see the power of sharing the screen and opportunities with new voices. Imagine if this film had bigger studio backing and Olivia Wilde money.
Yeah.
And I absolutely understand the decision to hold back on some of her punches and to show us without traumatizing us. And as a horror lover, there are many times where I simply have to say enough. Like, I'm not doing that. I just accidentally saw a clip on Instagram because someone posted a most horrifying graphic scene on Instagram, and I was like stuck watching it because you get stuck. And I was just like, I'm never going to watch this movie. I never would have watched this movie, and now I'll never get that out of my head.
Yeah.
It was horrifying.
Yeah.
It was gross, and I was like, why is this? Who did this? I was mad, like at the person who posted it and the person who created it.
Yeah.
I was like, that didn't need to exist. Anyway, so all that to say, as much as I love horror, there are times I'm like, do you really need that?
Yeah.
Do you? Or sometimes I ask, who is this for?
Yeah.
Before promptly turning it off because it's not for me. That's what the answer is.
Yeah.
Thinking of Them, I think that was what it was called. The, was it Amazon show? Not for me. I tried. And I was like, no, I know this story.
Yeah.
I know this story in real
like,
life.
who is it for then? It's like the audience is like the people who don't know, I guess. But like other than that, like you don't want to re-traumatize your audience that does know, who might be your main audience for watching this movie.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's yeah. I think that similarly to like the Purge election year and all of those things, and thinking like when we're covering, like how much of this is our responsibility to educate the audience and not traumatize them.
Yeah.
Like who is it? Who are we telling? Because some people you want to traumatize. You want to traumatize them with the truth.
Yeah.
Right. But you don't want to traumatize us who know the truth. So it's a delicate line. Absolutely. And I think a film like that, for a film like this, working to address some truly horrifying realities, her pulled punches can sometimes hurt more because it isn't fully educating. Because we're like, let's move on to the next thing. And without the full knowledge of the horrors of this very complex situation, viewers may be left wondering why Marisol makes such a dangerous trip in the first place. And while 9 months pregnant, no less. For us, she's the hero, right? She's fighting through to get a better life for her child. But for someone else, she could be seen as a reckless mother. And for a lot of the mothers who are making that actual trip, that's exactly what they're dubbed.
Yeah.
They're the monsters for putting their children in peril. And people just don't understand, okay, why does she feel like she has to do this? What would compel that mother to go through something like that? Instead of asking that, we're like, oh, well, look at, she shouldn't have the baby. Let's take it. And then we lost the baby. Anyway.
Yeah, it's I'll get into it a little bit in my section. The history is gross.
Me too. Because that's just the thing, right? Is there absolutely what she covers and the way she covers it, I get it. And also to get the funding that she needed for this film and to get it greenlit, she absolutely could not say all the things that she probably wanted to say. Right. And the care that went into that to say enough is great. Like, honestly, like all the credit to that. Right.
Yeah.
Because Marisol is not unique in this journey and in this situation, because many women will find themselves in the same one, just as pregnant as she is, with the same desperation and the same want for that dream. There's many Rickies, there's many Santos, they're all there. And it's hard to encapsulate all of the horrors and tragedies that go in line with America and immigration, and also just our impact on the countries that they're immigrating from. Yeah. Right. So since Gigi won't go there and couldn't go there and chose not to go there, we will. That's how the Ghouls go.
Well, yeah,
so
that's why
watch
our companion piece to the film is that now you get to learn all the why of what is taking place.
Yeah, you get the context, and I hope either you watch it, listen, and watch again, or listen and watch it and have the context of why that's horrible. And I'd also say, like, there could be like a whole little study book of Ghouls where you watch this one, you also watch Tigers Are Not Afraid, and the La Llorona, and then you watch the film and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. Like, if you want to learn, we got you. So let's talk about the horror of ICE and immigration in America. Right. An article on The Guardian, aptly titled "Death in the Sands: The Horror of the U.S.-Mexico Border," writer Reese Jones describes the sad tale of a young group of a group of young boys making a run for the border, only to end up dead on their side, never making it to America after being gunned down by Border Patrol. And that's just how he opens, just how they open that article. And they explain further like the rampant growth of patrols, because it didn't start this way. And that's what I found really interesting is like, how did we get here, especially with ICE being like a brand new baby organization, to have such a heavy hold on what is happening. Anyway, so they explain that in the early days, which is like the 1800s, 1890s, the Border Patrol was small and underfunded. There were initially 450 agents who provided their own horses and uniforms. They were independently, like, they had to provide their own materials. And it was like, just to protect, because there's craziness going on. It was the 1890s. Right?
Yeah. If anything, it was like gross, like enforcers, like who are like, I'm gonna protect my land. It's not your land, friend.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And also, like when we think of like the lawless West too, we did also have like black sheriffs and things like that. So it was different. It was just different. But by 2010, the Border Patrol had more than 20,000 agents. So we're thinking 450 to now 20,000. And I get it, America's huge, right? What are we trying to do? The usual order of operations doesn't end so much in death, but instead in deportation. Like that's the best outcome you could have, is that they send you back and they don't lose you or abuse you or kill you.
Yeah. So
the deportation process is not quick, but it is still defeatist. It's sad because you worked in danger to get here, and we put you back in danger.
Yeah.
Because why? Anyway, so Jones shares that there's a growth in that process too, in deportation, saying before 1986, there were rarely more than 20,000 deportations a year. By the mid-2000s, the number was 400,000 a year, and the number of migrants in detention facilities increased from 85,000 in 1995 to 440,000 in 2013. And surprisingly, not to me, more people have been deported from the U.S. during the Obama presidency than during any previous administrations. And that wasn't surprising to me, but yes.
Well, yeah, it started with Reagan and then just kept going strong.
And, you're overcompensating too. Like, look at me, I'm doing it. I'm doing what the Americans want. And that's not true. But yeah, 440,000 in 2013. That's old. That's old news. Right. The increase in staff and the hyper-militarized state of the Border Patrol has resulted in a spike of killings. So it's not only just that we have more people there and that we, have more patrols going on. They're also super funded, like grotesquely funded, and they're getting militarized like equipment for just being around. So the funding for the border surveillance has grown exponentially, and with little to no accountability, just like the military.
Yep.
The military
and the police
keeps failing its audits, and we're like, oh, what happened to the $3 trillion? Where did it go? And they're like, I don't know.
Protection.
That's somewhere.
We have
somewhere.
to protect
it's in
America's
the book somewhere.
interest. No, they were using it to destabilize nations. I'll talk about that.
Yeah, but on the books, it's somewhere. Yeah. It's somewhere in the books. I know it's around here somewhere. Come back a few, 2, 3, 7 more times. We'll tell you where it is.
But we got to arrest like the guy who sent laptops back to Amazon because he stole a couple $1,000s from Amazon. That's a problem. But the military, trillions of dollars. Doesn't matter. Not going to punish anybody.
Trillions. Well, anyway, further, Jones provides us with a glimpse into the dangers Marisol and those like her were facing during her trek. The two rocks they find themselves between, equally dangerous and brutal. Like I said, one of the most horrifying parts of the film, and it's too honest. And he says, or Reese says. Unfortunately, direct violence, including killings by the Border Patrol and on the Mexican side as cartels work to solidify control over profitable smuggling routes, does not even scratch the surface of the violence that surrounds the U.S.-Mexico border. The Border Patrol has recovered more than 6,000 bodies there since the 1990s. That's attributable to the construction of the border wall and the massive Border Patrol presence. Migrants are funneled to more dangerous and remote locations, just like migrants at the edges of the EU. Instead of crossing in a city, migrants are making the arduous journey through the deserts of Arizona, hiking 50 or maybe or more kilometers through arid and desolate terrain. So we didn't even like get to see that, because the horrors instead were like the people. It's not even just the environment that people are drowning, people are dying of dehydration, babies are dying, like just trying to get here because you're making it that much harder for them to go through the correct processes, because those don't exist. You've removed the correct, the safe processes, the ways for us to just invite people in, and instead you're trying to close it off and just labeling them as criminals for just wanting a different life.
Or you make it like too expensive to go the safer route in the first place, like the increase in the like travel expenses from like $2,000 to like $12,000. Like not a single person is going to just $12,000 per family member to travel from Guatemala to the United States. Like that's not.
Yeah. And even in her journey, like Marisol's in the film, she had to fork over money so constantly because they were taking advantage of it. And then like you come here and they're taking advantage. Like it's just, what do you do? Like the whole time I was like, where did she get that money? Like even I was like, where is that? Like, and how detrimental it is, because it's like bleeding from her. And if she did somehow get to America safely, right? Then what?
Yeah.
And even them like for her and her baby.
And even them like confiscating their stuff when they are under like the Border Patrol, like when they're like taken. Like imagine how much money they make just literally from stealing the items of people as they're crossing the border. And they're in detention.
So gross. All this is like the thesis of this is that there's no end to the horrors of immigration, and they're like similar to what we're going to do next week. There's so much that we could talk about that it's hard to file down into an episode. So we're trying. So the trek to this American dream, one which we know as Americans is false and designed to oppress and erase cultures and peoples, is only half the battle. Once here, having survived against all odds from both sides of the border, migrants find themselves still in danger, in active danger. And Marisol, motivated by her child, whom she hoped to give a better life, would be terribly disappointed to find not only the lack of care, but the danger of moving your child across the border. She risks losing her child altogether, not just like by death, but them taking her from her. In an article in the Times, they brought to light the case of 85,000 missing children, explaining, while HHS, which is the Health and Human Services, checks on all minors by calling them a month after they begin living with their sponsors, which is when they take a child from their family on the border, they give it to sponsors, which is just some random American. Data obtained by the Times showed that over the last 2 years, the agency could not reach more than 85,000 children, meaning that these 85,000 children have been shipped off somewhere and are now unaccounted for, or they're not able to be regularly monitored or checked. Like we have, like, without like this very flimsy way that we're checking on these children. So it's not that they've like poof vanished. It's just that we don't have solid ways of ensuring their safety, their well-being, and their health, because there's like one way, like you call them and if they don't answer, okay, we don't know where they are. We don't know if they're good. And even just knowing anything about our foster care system, I can't imagine what the sponsor system is like. So there's no real way for the parents, the real parents, to find them or make certain that they're safe. And the young boy, Ricky, who's traveling on his own to America, is not a far-fetched idea either, because just last year, a report by the Council of Foreign Relations stated that more than 152,000 unaccompanied minors were found at the U.S.-Mexico border in the fiscal year of 2022. That was in the article that I found, the 85,000 children nonsense. Families aside, America's immigration facilities have been revealed to be inhumane and dangerous too. So even if you get here and you put into one of these systems, that's a nightmare. After fighting for many years, NPR was able to obtain documents detailing the treatment of migrants in these facilities around the U.S. And in an article titled "Government's Own Experts Found Barbaric and Negligent Conditions in ICE Detention," one report revealed that in Pennsylvania, a group of correctional officers strapped a mentally ill male ICE detainee into a restraint chair and gave the lone female officer a pair of scissors to cut off his clothes for a strip search. Upon reviewing this, a federal inspector remarked, "There is no justifiable correctional reason that required the detainee who had a mental health condition to have his clothes cut off by a female officer while he was compliant in a restraint chair. This is a barbaric practice and clearly violates basic principles of humanity." And that's just one of the very many, many robust stories in that from all over. And that's just the one I picked from Pennsylvania because that's where we are.
Yeah.
Right. Because honestly, the horrors go on for migrants in this country. The American dream is so far removed from possibility. The melting pot is a veiled threat. Right. The horror stories behind ICE detention centers have no end. And from violence, cruel treatment, and inhumane conditions, there's cases like the uterus collector seem unshocking.
Yeah.
A situation not off the beaten path for America to start with, where a nurse came forward as a whistleblower detailing instances where there were forced hysterectomies and medical neglect at an ICE center in Irwin County, Georgia, which you can listen to our episode about that as well, where we talk to these documentarians covering how hysterectomies were happening at our prison systems in California to Black and brown women. What's even more horrifying about ICE is that they are a brand new institution. They were founded in 2003 to promote public safety and national security and to rid us of the illegal aliens. And no one's illegal, no one's an alien. Yeah. You're a human. And it's a brand new organization, sprung up with this air of safety after 9/11, and it is outfitted with military-grade weapons and equipment. And it's military-grade weapons and equipment that they use on civilians in American cities and towns. So it's like the military is supposed to go somewhere else and mess things up, and that sucks already. Now you're also here?
Yeah.
So no longer are we just a threat at the border, but we're here in our country's soil, right? And all this to say that I totally understand Gigi Saul Guerrero's need to approach the film the way that she did. Yeah. Because of all of this heavy things that I had to unpack to fully understand and to include in this episode, I'm horrified, right? And so I'm thankful, right, that she did that. And to have us empathize with Marisol and twist the American dream into the monster that it proves itself to be, right? And I found no end to the different horrifying things while I was doing the research for this episode about, America's immigration system. There could be so many movies made about this, and I'm glad that this is the one that we start with, right? My only consolation, I will say, was that Direct Action does get the goods because the Shutdown Burks Coalition was able to do just that. And they shut down the Burks ICE Detention Center. There's some local Philadelphia documentarians who are covering these issues and really highlighting the crimes and just injustice of the ICE folks. And so it's one small step for the whole of America, but it's massive to the populations that are here and to the families that are here who were separated from their loved ones. And so for the aspiring Marisols, Rickies, and Santos out there, it can be a small win and a chance at maybe not the American dream, but a dream nonetheless.
Yeah. Well said, Gabe.